Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. Some late arriving people this morning. I will say who's in the room and who is online after that. But we'll start this morning. Zach is we'll give our inspiration this morning. So I will call up Zach Finney. We'll give our inspiration this morning.
Good morning, everybody. My inspiration comes piggybacking off of last week's topic as I discovered it on YouTube University. So I was down a rabbit hole, probably 5-6 hours in, and I stumbled across a talk from one of my favorite actors as a kid, Shia LaBeouf. Do we know Shia LaBeouf? Even Stevens, Transformers, some very popular actor. And so in this interview, I was surprised when he said he wasn't a talented person. And he said he doesn't believe in talent. He says that his success was completely attributed to his father just putting him in the right positions with the right skills and the right set of behaviors, that when he got in a position to succeed in interviews, he was able to succeed. And so outside of physical genetic qualities, I can never do what LeBron James does, but outside of that realm of physical attributes, I think if anybody can do it, anybody can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. And with that, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Everyone, a minute to settle, and I will invite Margot up to introduce her guest this morning, Margot Bittner.
Thank you very much, Mike, as officer of the day. So I'd like to introduce everyone to Kalena Britt. Kay is a member of our Lions Club, and you probably can see Lion Phil on the screen there as well. She also knows Tracy. She contacted me about what we do, and I invited her to join us this morning. So welcome, Kalena. Enjoy the meeting.
Thank you, Margot. Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting me join you this morning.
Thank you, Kalena. And we will turn back to you at the end of the meeting to give your impression. So this is mainly for Phil, who is our table topics master this morning. Phil, in the room, we have Len Thornton, Mark Campos, Darcy Colby, Chris Kelly, Steve Smith, Zach Finney, myself, Bridget Newton, Dr. Gerald Stevens, Mary Cavanero, Larry McKenzie, Beth Banks, Mike Florio, Kate Orr, Carol Halstead, Joe Budnick, Samantha Giambattista, Maggie Craig, and David Licata. And online we have Margot Bittner, Tracy Farrell, Phil Russell, David Jones, and Les Robinson. And with that, do we have any other announcements this morning? A lot going on. No, bro. So, do we have to do the slate of officers again? Discussion? Or are we waiting on that? We wait on that? We can vote on. Do I have to announce it slate though? I'll do it at the end. We do it at the end so we get it right. Thank you. Sorry about that. And with that, I will turn it over to Toastmaster of the day, all the way from Charlotte, North Carolina, David Jones.
Thank you, Michael. And good morning, fellow Toastmasters and guests. A little housekeeping. I know Maggie wanted to do a speech. Is she going to do one because the slot is open? Otherwise, she can just do it.
I will do it.
All right, perfect. And you can do Jester. Give you 2 roles today. Good morning. Last week when Maggie started to do the Canadian pledge, it made me think Canada. That would be a good topic for today. And I've only had a few chances to go to Canada, obviously over in Vancouver, and then on the East Coast to Halifax and Peggy's Cove, and then of course Niagara Falls. Those are my 3 events into Canada. And I went on a cruise, and one of the cruises, or the cruise went to Halifax. And I learned then, because I toured this city and the cemeteries is back on April 15th, 1912, when the Titanic sank. Halifax was a big hub, not for rescuing, but for recovery. And it was the main base for recovery because of the rail systems and the ports, and they were close to get to the Titanic's area. And they recovered 209 bodies, many of which are buried in Halifax today. They have various cemeteries and museums there. I thought that was interesting. But what I didn't know was a few years later, there was the Halifax explosion that was during World War I on December 6, 1917. And it was the deadliest non-nuclear disaster in history. And I didn't hear about this recently until I saw it on TikTok a few weeks ago. But when in the Halifax harbor, two ships were passing each other. They were metal ships, and they hit each other, and they were friendly ships. And the sparks started a fire on the, what is it called? The Mont Blanc's deck, because it had benzol on it. And as it was on fire, it started drifting towards the shoreline. And back in 1917, people just thought it was cool, and they were standing there watching, some looking through the window. And the ship was full of explosives. And eventually it blew up, killing 1,800 to 2,000 people and injuring 9,000 people. The next day, there was a blizzard, which didn't help the situation at all. So that's my little story of Halifax. I got to visit it and also go up to Peggy's Cove. It was in October. It was very cold. That's all I remember about Peggy's Cove. It's just standing on rocks next to the water, getting froze to death. And today, as we go through, if you want to share any of your Canadian stories with us, that would be great. And I'm going to go ahead and start calling on our functionaries, and I'll start with the general evaluator since I'm looking at him. Les, tell us what a general evaluator does, please.
Very simple. I generally evaluate the meeting, the evaluators at the end of the meeting today, go through all the highlights, ask for the reports, or the Toastmaster can ask for the reports. And then we do the drawing for the big money we all win at the end. And then we talk about what's going to happen next week.
Awesome. Thank you, Les.
Thank you,
And for our guest, we have three different sections of the meeting. We're going to have table topics in a little bit, which is the impromptu speaking, where you could do a question if you'd like. And then we move into the prepared speeches, which people have been preparing for a while, and that's why they call it prepared. And at the end, we have an evaluation where you are evaluated by one of your peers. And that's kind of how each meeting is structured. And an important part of it is to know the word of the day. So I'm going to ask Lynn Thornton to come up and give us as the word master.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I remember a long, long time ago when I first joined this organization, and Margot gave a speech. She introduced us to a whole bunch of Yiddish words, which have crept into the American lexicon. And it was so entertaining. Meshuggah,
Isolation and
oy vey,
disrespect.
schmaltz. And I would love if you revisited that speech at some point, Margot. I think the current membership would really enjoy it. But it was a virtual plethora of words from the Hebrew language, and that means a lot to me. Now that's the word of the day, plethora, and it means a lot or an overabundance of something. I'll use it in a sentence. Canada has a plethora of natural resources. They're never going to become the 51st state, but they're great to have as a neighbor. Plethora. I'll be taking note of anybody that uses the word, especially the table topics contestants, and report as appropriate. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Lynn. And yes, Canada has a plethora of lakes. It has the most lakes of all countries, FYI. Next up is going to be our master, Toastmaster Chris. Are you ready? Or no?
Hello. So
Oh.
today I will be the master. I will be counting all the filler ahs and ums and any other spacings that aren't appropriate. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and I'll definitely keep you busy today.
Instruments.
And the person who is engaged in today's theme as well, wearing his Canadian jacket, Larry McKenzie, is our grammarian. Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Viva la Canada! No? Well, I have to tell you one quick story. When Buffalo Sabres played in Buffalo and the microphone went dead, the Canadian national anthem, everyone in the stands sang "O Canada." Was great. You saw a lot of Canadian jerseys, Montreal Canadiens, which are otherwise known as the Habs. They had a nice show of people in the stands. Well, if you watched any of the games from Montreal, ole, 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 they were the only ones. And I saw one Sabres jersey when they were scanning, and it was almost, I think, a mistake. It was a blurb that went across. So the Canadians are very proud people. I happen to be one of them, perhaps. And thank you, David, for talking about Nova Scotia. My job today will be to check on the grammar. Now, if you use any Canadian grammar and incorporate a or something as such into your speaking, I will make note of that also. So please use proper grammar, and we will see how we can do towards the end of the meeting. Back to you, David, and Viva la Canada.
Thank you, Larry. And our quote master is Darcy Colby. Darcy.
I've been standing in the wings trying to be ready because I don't have a program. And I said, I've got to be ready to get up there. So there's no dead air. There are a plethora of cows in the United States and in Canada. And this is what I learned about life from a cow. Wake up in a happy mood. Don't cry over spilled milk. Turn the udder cheek and move on. Seize every opportunity and milk it for all it's worth. It's better to be seen and not heard. Get it? Herd of cows. Honor thy father and thy mother and all your other relatives. Never take any bull from anyone. Always let them know who's the boss. Bossy, boss, boss, boss. Don't forget to count your blessings every day. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Darcy. And the vocal variety was important for those jokes, so thank you. And our double duty person doing jester role, Maggie Craig, our Canadian, along with Larry. I don't know who else is Canadian, but obviously Larry and Maggie. Maybe you can do a shout out.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, and welcome fellow Toastmasters, guests, fellow Canadians, fellow part-time Canadians, and fellow wannabe Canadians. I'm just gonna put my glass on. I'm getting old now. You might not know that, but I'm getting old now. I'm not a lumberjack or a fur trader. I don't live in an igloo anymore. Property taxes forced me out. My name is Maggie, and I am Canadian, part-time. I am a dual citizen, which means depending on the hockey score, I can become extremely patriotic in either direction. Canadians are the only people who start an argument with, I'm sorry, but Americans celebrate Independence Day by blowing things up. Canadians celebrate Independence Day by quietly standing near a body of water wearing a fuzzy vest. So yes, I say Zed, and like Western New Yorkers, I know what real winter is like. I believe ketchup chips are a food group, and I think that apologizing is a cardiovascular activity. But I also know this. Canadians and Americans are a lot alike. We love our families, our freedom, our coffee, and complaining about the weather. So from friendly neighborhood dual citizen, my name is Maggie. I am Canadian. Sorry, not sorry. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Maggie. And our timer, very important role. Nancy Ferry, tell us about your timer roll.
Yes, I'm Nancy, and this morning I will be your timer. You will see the green for table topics at 1.5 to 2 minutes with a 15-second buffer. Speeches are usually 5 to 7 unless I hear otherwise with a 30-second buffer. Evaluations are 2 to 3 minutes. One to two. Okay. Okay. And then you'll see the yellow at 1:30 to 2 or 2.5. What are we doing? Okay. You got it?
Oh, okay. That was quick. Okay, thank you. And finally, our quiz master, Tracy, want to tell us what you're going to be doing?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. As Toastmasters, we all know that listening is one of the most important leadership skills that we can learn. So in today's meeting, there'll be a plethora of information that we're going to hear. And from that, I will pull a few details and quiz you at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Timer. And I just had a few thoughts as Maggie was talking. She mentioned the fur trade, and that was during the 1600s to the 1700s. The fur trade was beaver pelts. That was what Canada was known for. And as far as her talking about Canadians being nice, many years ago, I met a lady on a cruise, and she happened to live in the Vancouver Island, and we started dating. Now, if you look at a map between Canada or Vancouver Island and Charlotte, North Carolina, that's a long distance relationship. And eventually I had to break up with her because it just was not sustainable. And she was really mad, but it was probably the politest breakup, yelling at me, that I've ever had. And I was always like, I need to date Canadians because they are nice, even when they're breaking up with you. So that's my polite Canadian story. All right, Phil Russell, table topics. Looking forward to it.
Oh, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, our guests on Zoom and in person. I need Dave Licata to come to the lectern. I know he has a job, but I have a question I have to ask him. It's about something he's done. I'm telling you, he knows this about everything I know, and I want him to describe this to you. He can participate if he chooses. I know he didn't have a job at first. I talked with him and he said, no, I don't have a job. So I said, you will now have something for me to say to you.
I couldn't resist a trip to the lectern, Phil. You know that.
This is going to be tricky, David. David.
Yes.
Tell me about a boot. You were a coffee persona.
Oh.
You told me that you took pride in keeping your coffee pot crystal clear and your coffee makers completely well cleaned. Tell me, tell all of us. We need to know. What's the secret to keeping this thing crystal clear?
Mr. Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. Before we go any further, I want to thank Len for choosing Plethora. It means a lot. And do it. There is a product in the coffee service industry. It's a lovely shade of blue, and you put it in your coffee pot, and it'll take care of all the stain. It'll take care of the stain in the carafe, the glass carafe. It'll take care of that. I'm a professional brewer. I know very little about domestic brewers, but anytime you see a Bunn or a Nuco brewer, I can take that thing apart blindfolded like a French legionnaire with a rifle. So you have to use a delimer to get that. And I had a friend, and it's a friend that's Phil and I have in common, and he worked for the city of Lockport's water filtration plant. And I could not get the lime out of this tank because there's a tank with a heating element, and it was full of residue. It was full of lime, and I couldn't get it clean. And then you find out that all you had to do was just use vinegar. So that was quite the eye opener. If you're going to use vinegar to clean your domestic one, just rinse it like crazy when you're done. Don't be afraid. Rinse it, and then rinse it again. Coffee is very important. It's come to my house. I'm a bit obsessive. I have at least 4 different whole beans you can try. Just tell me what you want. It's fresh ground, and it's prepared in the French press. And that is retired. As I gave a speech once, that is retired coffee. So as you retired, I'll show you how to make that nice, lazy, enjoyable coffee. I see Sam here going, "Are you out of your mind? I just want the coffee." I don't have time for that. That's utility coffee. But when you're ready for retired coffee, let me know. Thank you very much, Mr. Table Topics Master.
I had a plethora of candidates for table topics. And then everybody seemed to have a job that I picked out. But I found some more. Is Bridget in the house? If Bridget is in the house, she better get up there.
Here.
Bridget,
Yes.
tell me about your experience with hockey.
My experience with hockey. Thank you. Yes. So I will have to admit, I am not a huge hockey fan. However, I just had a flashback of a situation when I was probably maybe 3rd grade. I was at a friend's house, and in the country, any water that's frozen is a great place to ice skate. We were ice skating and we were playing hockey, and there was a plethora of snow coming down. There you go. And as she took a swing, she hit me right in the face. My glasses, because I've worn glasses since I was about 2 or 2, I went into my nose, which was not a good hockey experience. Since then, I have stayed away from hockey sticks, hockey pucks. I may have ice skated on the ponds behind me, but no hockey involved with that one. That is what I have for my hockey story. Thank you.
Beth, thanks. Get up there now.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Phil.
Good morning. Oh, now, when you're speaking Canadian, do other people understand you? It's a whole different language, you know. Please tell me of your language experience of those Canadians.
Thank you, Phil. My language experience with the Canadians probably came when I lived there for 6 months, and I was in the middle of the Italian district. I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb because I was probably the only blonde in the whole area. we would, at the time we were Catholic, we would go to Mass, and they had three different masses. You had your English Mass, you had your Latin Mass, in those days still Latin, and then you had your Italian Mass also. The problem was we really couldn't understand any of them because the English Mass was done by a gentleman who had a very strong Irish brogue. We didn't understand. I have had Canadian friends my whole life, so I understand the about and I understand the A, but I didn't understand the Irish brogue. So we stood up when everyone else stood up, and we sat down when everyone else sat down, and we didn't have a clue what was going on aside from that. But I do have a plethora of Canadian stories, having lived there and having gone there my whole life. I have to say, anyone wants to go somewhere that's a wonderful beach, Wasaga Beach is amazing. And I haven't been there in a few years now, but it's a great place. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Phil.
Let's do one more. Katie Banks, get your butt up there. Or
Don't boss me around, Phil. Hey.
I don't know why I did
Go
that
ahead,
today.
you can. Like that's gonna stop.
Oh, now quickly. You've traveled a bit. The Canadians called the Habs, the habitat for the homeland. But you go up to that area, you don't speak the Queen's English, you don't speak the US English, and you don't speak an awful lot of Canadian, but you can speak a lot of French. Do you understand any of that French?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. I can understand a plethora of the French vocabulary I see since I did take French in high school. And then many of you who were members a year ago know a lot about my mother and I and my husband took a lovely trip to Quebec City. It was incredible. It's about just 1 year right now. It was the end of April. We're still getting the ads pop up all the time to learn French and visit Quebec City again. And isn't it time to get back? And top 10 attractions, and the algorithms know that we click on it occasionally. And because we're going to Vancouver this August for the conference and other sightseeing, we'll see the other end of Canada, where we've never been. I'm very excited to see that blend of languages, cultures, foods, the mashup of the cities around the world, and specifically the Canadian cities I've been. I love Toronto is one of my favorite cities, and I can't wait to get back. And okay, what else can we talk about? Because I could tell a whole speech about each city I just mentioned. There's a lot of, I guess, the bucket list. A couple other Toastmaster friends of ours, Pam and others, are going to take the train, I think, across the Rockies to then go to Vancouver. So they're very excited about that. I can't squeeze that in, but someday I'd love to. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master, eh?
Before I turn it over to the Toastmaster of the day to get our timing and our word of the day, I want to say I love Canada. It's a great place. And for those of you that don't know, hockey is not their national sport. Curling.
Is it lacrosse? Is it curling?
No, it's hurling. Let's go. Nancy.
Okay. We weren't sure you were right there. So here you are. For our timing table topics, Dave Licata came in at 2:04, Bridget 1:11, Beth 1:38, And Katie, 122. It looks like they all qualified in that department. Do we have a timers? I mean, yeah, not a timers, a word report. That's what happens when you wake up late.
Yes, we do have a word report. I'm pleased and proud to report that all 4 of our contestants used the word of the day, plethora. Some additional people used it. Keep up the good work, plethora. Everybody that gets a chance to speak. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Lynn. And before we move into the speaking portion of the meeting, I would like to ask, as he's tearing it off, Larry McKenzie, when you're done, I just want you to come up and give a toast as our Canadian in the room, because we have to do a toast. And I figured it'd be fitting for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity this morning to share a toast with our Toastmasters and those of you that are online, our guest also. This morning, as we raise a glass, let's raise a glass to continued friendship with our Canadian neighbors. We may be separated by a border, but basically our values and as such are the same, and we share a lot with our Canadian friends. So keep that spirit alive. Viva la Canada. Ose, can you see? A? Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Larry. And all right, let's move into the speaking portion, and I'm going to introduce Margot Sue Bittner, DTM, to introduce her speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. So, Kalana, what we do for evaluation is we don't critique, we evaluate. So we try to tell the person what they do well, where they possibly could improve, but end with a positive of where they can improve, because it's much more inspiring that way, which leads me into what Mike Florio is doing today. He is doing an inspirational speech. And Mike and I go way back. I'll never forget his first meeting. We had such a good time together. He's going to present a speech that will inspire the audience. It could be entertaining or moving. And he should also be aware of the audience response and adjust accordingly. His title this morning is The Great White North, a Man of Two Countries. So I'm looking forward to hearing Mike speak on the Great White North. Please welcome him.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our guests this morning, welcome. Be careful what job you take. It just may turn into a career. And that was the case for me. My first real job was a security guard at the paper mill in Lockport it was Upson's on Ohio Street in Lockport, right at the end of Stevens Street. The great thing was it was 2 blocks away from my home. Really, really close. They made wallboard out of paper, and they made puzzle board as well. So those were the 2 products. I was 19 when I took that job in 1982. I opened the gate for trucks, and that wasn't all I did. I tried to learn every single job that there was there. And I had a chance to walk through the paper mill and visit and chat with everybody in the lab, in the maintenance shop, in the paper machine, and I learned as much as I really could at that age. And I worked 11 at night till 7 in the morning. I worked the night shift. I told my granddaughter that, and she said, "Did they have Red Bull back then?" I go, no, they did not have Red Bull. It's a lot of coffee, and you just did what you had to do. And that was all for $3.50 an hour. So I would go to school during the day, and I would work and study at my job at night. It allowed me to study as a night watchman. I made the rounds, just like the Tom Petty song. And then something happened that would change my life, and that was they sold the company, and a Canadian company purchased Upson. And it wasn't just any company, it was Domtar. And Domtar was Dominion Tar, and part of it was owned by the Canadian government. And it was one of the largest paper manufacturers in Canada. So I thought, wow, okay, this is good. I still was a U.S. citizen, but working for a Canadian-owned company at the time. And I got a raise. They bumped me up to $4 an hour then. I was like, wow. They had a stock purchase program, so I could take 10% of that $4 that I earned and buy stock in the company. And then they had a new savings plan there. It was called a 401k. And the 401k, if you don't know, came out in 1981. That was 2 years before I started with the company. And I started investing 6% and they matched dollar for dollar. So my $4, that was 8 cents an hour, but they doubled that. It was 16 cents. So I was saving for retirement, baby. I went on to finish my bachelor's degree while I worked there. And I left for about 3 months. And then I returned and I was offered a job in their recycling division and I took it. I worked for Domtar slash Cascade slash Narampak as it changed hands for 19 years. And I did that. That was my first really career. I had all different types of jobs working there. I was a buyer at 30 years old for 5 paper mills in Canada. And I would buy the waste paper from the United States and I would export it into Canada for them. So I had the great thing about that company was they took young people in and they gave them a lot of experience. I mean, you could do really kind of whatever you wanted. And I always grabbed at everything I possibly could. So I worked for a Canadian company. My boss was Canadian. I remember the interview. He said, "Do you have any problem?" Because they had to hire me back as to work for the Canadian company when I came back. And I said, "No, I don't have a problem working for a Canadian company. Do you pay in American funds?" Because the exchange rate really wasn't that good. And he said, "Yeah, we pay in American." I said, "Well, then I guess I don't really have a problem with that at all." So uh, again, I worked for a Canadian company. My boss was Canadian. I listened to Canadian radio. I loved Rush, the Guess Who, the Hip. I went to the SARS concert where there were 300,000 people at that concert. I think at the time, the only larger concert there was Woodstock. It was amazing. You saw all these great bands and there was just a sea of people. It was just awesome. And we had such a great time. Myself and my 2 brothers, that was kind of one of the things that, kind of our last kind of hurrah. I drink a lot of beer. I drink Canadian beer, a plethora of beer, okay? I've gone through some Labatt's, and Labatt's Blue is still one of my favorites. I've done a few OV splits. And then, after all that, in the morning, I'd have to have my Timmies, right? I'd have to have a plethora of those to kind of wear off the hangover. I could do a real good sorry and yeah, because I spoke with Canadians every day. I talked with them all the time, but they always knew. I'd go up there, and as soon as I opened my mouth, they'd go, "Oh, where are you from in the States?" They never called it, America, or it was always the States. They shortened it. Where are you from? They knew as soon as I opened my mouth. I couldn't say a word. I'd wear a toque every once in a while. That was always fun. I liked maple syrup. I'd sing along with the anthem, and I actually knew the words because, the Sabres game. It's kind of surprising that people don't realize that we do both here, and I think it's great. At times, I felt more Canadian than American because I'd wake up in the morning, I'd go to Canada, I'd work, and then I'd come home. And then sometimes I'd go to Canada and I'd be there for a week. And then I'd come home and I go, wow, I was a man of literally 2 nations at the time. I would live in the United States and work in Canada, and it was great. I spent a lot of time in beautiful cities. Montreal is one of my favorites. I had a favorite restaurant there, Gibby's it was called. I don't know if you ever ate at Gibby's, but and I love Toronto. Loved going even to I went up as far as Thunder Bay, way up there. And anyway, I knew every bump in the road to the QEW going up there. Really, I did. I drove up there every month, and I have a lot of friends up there in both Quebec and in Ontario, and it's a brotherhood to me. And I still have a lot of friends there. But I'll tell you what, I'll bet you Canadian dollar that we're going to beat the snot out of those heads tonight, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, I'd like to ask Steve Smith to come up and tell us about his speaker. Steve, thanks.
Right here, thank you. Today I'm evaluating Mike Licata, who's working out of the engaging humor path. An L3 elective in creating effective visual aids. Now his purpose is to practice selecting and using a variety of visual aids during the speech. His speech is 5 to 7 minutes for the benefit of the timer. I give you Mike Licata, Terrifying Possibilities. Mike?
I'll give Mark a minute to kind of load the websites by telling my favorite part about growing up in Niagara County is the luxury that the province of Ontario's drinking age was 19. So that is definitely one of those experiences is that you learn how to have fun at the ripe old age of 19 instead of having to wait till you turn 21. So you definitely learn the new experiences, and I have many stories that are grossly inappropriate for 20 to 8 o'clock on a Thursday morning. And with that, Madam Timer, I ask you to start the time now. The thing that terrifies me is we have grown from sports books to prediction markets. And I will ask Mark to load the first web page that I sent him during this week. And I want to talk about I'll start with the rise of FanDuel and sports books. The ease at which people are able to place bets on their phone is one of those things that terrifies me because it is so simple and so easy to spend money and grossly either misinterpret what's going on, relying too much on insider information, or one of those things that can spiral due to the type of bets that a lot of individuals place on what happens during a game. The two largest is the first one is FanDuel and the second one is DraftKings. These are the two biggest sports books that still advertise. And just like everything else, I think the contradiction in terms of sports teams taking all this money from these two websites is it's hypocritical. I think that the question of whether or not there's honesty in sports is still one of the purest arguments a lot of people have. And I know that in what college sports used to be, there was always point shaving scandals. And always had, when you had the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, in doing something, there was always questions on certain things. And it's just more prevalent now because you can put everything in your pocket and you can just put bets through your phone. And now it's even worse because the sports books have evolved into the prediction markets. So I will focus on the next two. First, we're going to start with Polymarket. And as you guys can see on your screen, Polymarket allows you to bet on anything. And this like terrifies me at so many levels, because when I looked at it the other day, one of the things you can bet on is whether or not we're going to have another pandemic from the hantavirus. Why anybody would bet on that, I have no idea. That you can bet on it is even sadder. So, in my research, I was able to deduce that basically because of a lawsuit by Kelshi, the other prediction market sued the Commodity and Futures Trading Commission, which is supposed to regulate prediction markets. It was one of those things where Kelshi actually won, and that opened the floodgates to make everything legal and everything more predictable, more possible to bet on anything. And it actually, that the the CFTC actually dropped its countersuit a couple of years ago. So this is all fueled by money. And in my research, the sports there, I couldn't find anything on what the prediction markets take in, but I did read that the sports betting industry hit a revenue figure of $16.96 billion last year, and the biggest markets are New York State, Illinois, and probably a couple different other states. The other thing I found interesting in terms of doing my research with the Kalshi and the prediction markets is the fact that traditional gambling markets, so the sports books actually have to pay state and tribal as well as federal taxes, whereas the prediction market revenues are only taxable at the federal level. So I am 98% sure, because of where we live in New York State, that's probably going to change, because this is New York State and everything gets taxed. So I do think that, again, a lot of what the future is that I really do preach caution, because there is a plethora of opportunities to waste a lot of everyone's hard-earned money through prediction markets and through the sports books. And I do also want to say that yes, gambling is an addiction. It is something that should be taken seriously. Again, it goes into the different vices and everything like that. And with that, I'll ask Mark to put up the last slide, the last website this morning, and this is actually from New York State. This is the opportunities, the information that if you know anybody that could possibly have a gambling addiction, this is where I would send you to find the information, because there is plenty of help. And there is also a phone number as well that you can find online. I ask most people, be smart when it comes to what you do with your free time. Understand that gambling is a vice, and that just because you can bet on something doesn't mean you should. And with that, I will turn it over to our Toastmaster.
Thank you, Michael. And Licata number 1, who is actually number 2 in the order. Dave Licata, do you want to introduce your speaker, Maggie Craig?
Maggie was going to do everything she could to stay within the realm of pathways. But when she found out the theme, and it was compounded by the fact that she did suffer a cut and she bled maple syrup, she wanted to do something about growing up in Canada. So she was kind enough to send me this note. She wants to give us a true idea of what her patriot love means. And she's going to share some passion, some Canadian passion, which is rare, except for hockey. And God forbid you should be behind or ahead of the hockey players
and you're playing Canada, because they're just going to spend the rest of the game driving you into the boards and trying to kill you. The fun of living this close to the border, my passion is I had to go to Toronto on business. The people there started kidding me about being American. I said, fellas, you have no idea of how old I am. When I grew up, we watched Canadian TV all the time. If there was a show that was on Friday and you missed it, you could catch it on the Canadian TV on Tuesday and be up to date with the plot. And then I told them that I was 9 years old before I figured out that I wasn't Canadian. Let's hear it for Maggie Craig.
You think I'm Canadian? Good morning, fellow Toastmasters, again. And again, welcome to our guest who wasn't here when I spoke before, but good morning. Wish I could remember. As many of you know, I'm a dual citizen, Canadian and American. Some of you don't know I'm actually also British, 3 passports, which means I can compare both countries with great authority and disappoint both sides equally. Now, growing up Canadian, I thought I understood true patriot love and what it meant. I thought the Canadian anthem was very Canadian, polite, measured, respectful. While the American anthem, well, it's basically a battle scene set to music. Bombs bursting in air, flags surviving explosions, pure cinematic drama. And honestly, as a Canadian, I thought we're gentler people. But this week, I learned something that completely changed the way I hear "O Canada." Apparently, the French and the English anthems are not translations of each other at all. Same melody, completely different emotional energy. And suddenly I realized French Canada has been quietly hiding the American anthem this whole time. Because the English version begins very calmly. "O Canada, our home and native land." Lovely, gentle, could be sung better. It sounds like a pleasant man in a fleece vest holding a double-double. That's Canadian for coffee, 1 cream, 1 sugar. Then true patriot love. Again, restrained. Canadian patriotism rarely sounds like, "Let's go." It sounds more like, well, this country has a plethora of admirable qualities. But then I looked at the French lyrics. Mon Dieu. Oh no. The French anthem is passionate, heroic, almost revolutionary. It has swords, it has sacrifice, it has glory. And because I parle français un peu, I had to work my way slowly through it. And suddenly it hit. Quand ton bras sait porter la paix, which means, for your arm knows how to carry the sword. The sword? Excuse me? Meanwhile, English Canada is over there politely zipper merging at the border crossing. The next line. Il sait porter la croix. It knows how to carry the cross. And suddenly I realized the French version actually sounds far closer in tone to the American anthem than the English Canadians Canadian one does, not in politics, but in emotional intensity. The American anthem celebrates survival through battle. The original French Canadian anthem speaks about endurance, sacrifice, protecting identity, and faith. Both are emotionally charged. Meanwhile, the English Canadian version sounds like we'd all prefer to discuss this calmly over a bowl of soup. And suddenly I realized that patriot love can sound very different depending on the language, history, and fears of the people singing it. And honestly, the difference says something fascinating about Canada. The French lyrics were written first. After Canada became a country in 1880, French Canada at that time saw itself as preserving language, culture, and identity against overwhelming pressure. So the anthem became emotional, protective, poetic. The English version evolved later from British traditions of loyalty, order, and civic pride. Two founding cultures, two emotional vocabularies, same melody. And somehow, instead of forcing one side to surrender, Canada did the most Canadian thing possible. We kept both. Because Canada isn't really a melting pot. It's more like a national potluck where nobody entirely agrees on the recipe, but everyone brought something meaningful. And maybe that's why this discovery fascinated me so much as a dual citizen, because living between Canada and America, you start noticing national personalities. Americans tend to say, "Tell me what you stand for." Canadians say, "Well, let's hear everybody out first." But hidden inside our own anthems, especially in French, is this reminder that Canada also has passion, conviction, fire. Apparently concealed between layers of plaid, politeness, and constitutional compromise. And honestly, I can't unhear it now. The next time I hear the French lyrics, I'm not imagining gentle snowflakes meandering around Parliament Hill. I'm imagining visionaries charging heroically through a blizzard, which honestly explains Quebec drivers a little. But maybe there's a lesson in all of this, not just for Canadians. We live in a time when people increasingly believe that if someone speaks a different political, cultural, or emotional language, one side must lose. But Canada's anthems suggest something quieter. Perhaps true patriot love is not insisting everyone sing the same verse. Perhaps it is choosing to remain in harmony, even when the words are different. And perhaps that is the beauty of Canada. Quiet and passionate, political, practical, and poetic, English and French. Different histories, different stories, different words, one melody, and maybe that is true patriot love.
Thank you, Maggie. Madam Timer, can we get a timer's report on our speakers?
Mike and Maggie, you were scaring me. Mike 728, Maggie 727, and Mike Licata 607. So it looks like all three of our contestants just made it.
Thank you. And we'll have our little voting thing pop up on the screen in a minute, and you all are voting in person. And with that, I'd like to relinquish control to our first evaluator, Margot Sue Bittner. Margaret.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. Mike, that was a wonderful trip down memory lane. I loved how you organized the speech. You started with uh, your first job when you were 19 and how the company changed and how you grew and changed with it. I thought that was absolutely wonderful. I also enjoyed the fact that you wove in the word of the day, plethora. And because of the different tasks you had, it was the perfect use of the word. You didn't just throw it in there like some of us do, saying the word of the day is plethora. You used it in the proper context. Your goal today was to inspire us. So the question is, did you inspire us? Number one, you inspired me to reflect on my own history and the different jobs I've had and the way I've grown through them. You inspired me to use humor. Some of your speeches, your techniques made us laugh, made us feel amused, and you even tied into the theme of the day, which doesn't always happen with our speeches. Two of them did today, but that doesn't always happen. So I loved how you inspired me. And you did keep us entertained throughout it, again, through your vocal variety. But part of my job is to tell you how to improve. And one thing that distracted me a little bit today was you were gripping the lectern. You usually don't do that, but you stood there with your two hands on either side, gesturing with just one hand. Some of your stories could have used both hands. Again, you were using notes. And perhaps if you, instead of having it, I'm not sure if it was written out, but just having a few key words written out and written very large, it would have helped you to look up a little bit more instead of down at the lectern. But this speech, Mike, truly excited and inspired me. I loved how you looked back at your life, and it also gave us a very interesting lesson. Often people say, I don't know what to speak about. I have a speech coming up. Your example today will help all of us go forward and create some wonderful speeches that we can do in the future. So thank you so much for this trip down memory lane. And as you probably all realize, memory lane, inspire, kept us entertained and excite. That spells Mike. A wonderful speech today. Thank you so much, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Margoso. Appreciate that. And Steve Smith, I'd like to hear your feedback from Mike Licata.
Thank you. As I step up to the mic, I will be talking about Mike Licata this morning. I want to thank you for bringing that topic up because I'm sure I'm not the only one that finds all of this very confusing. And you were going into legalities of the betting sites. Now I look at this. If you are placing money and saying, I think this is what's going to happen, isn't that the very definition of a bet? Now I know they call it a contract. And there's big legal issues going on with this, as you mentioned. But I'm glad you helped shed a little light on all this. You brought us a lot of good information about all this, and I appreciate that because I'm very ignorant of how this all works. And you were talking about even the basic honesty in sports, which is always in question. How many people sitting there tell us the referees are rigged in that football game that the Bills lost? And the way they do things seems to lend credibility to that argument. How then can you bet on it if you think it's fixed? Very interesting food for thought that you brought in there. Now, you used a few hand gestures during this, and I know it's limited because you're stuck here behind the lectern. You can't get all over the place unless you have a mic. But that's one of my suggestions. Be a little more animated up here. My other suggestion was now on Zoom, I'm sure they could read those things really nice because it's right in front of you on the screen. But me sitting in the back there, I couldn't read the screen very well for your graphics. You explained them very well, but I had a hard time reading that. So somehow to make it more legible for all of us in the audience here, I think that would help. You presented us with a lot of good information about this, and I love some of your, I'll call them bullet points. Everything is taxable in New York. Very good. And the fact that we're talking about a $16.96 billion industry in sports betting, that hits home, that this is a big deal. And I really appreciate you bringing this today. And I love the way you wrapped it all up, telling us just because you can bet on something doesn't mean that you should. I think that bears repeating. That was a very good thought. So I thank you for bringing all this today to us to give us something more to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Steve. And finally, Dave Licata to give us feedback on Maggie Craig's speech.
The sandwich. What I liked. Very clever. There's a big lesson here for everyone in the room. Rope them in the beginning with a topic that they're familiar with. Long before the events of that Mike going dead at the hockey arena, we all know the Canadian national anthem. Some of us that remember when the TV would conk out at about 1 a.m. and that was it, good night, they had this marvelous little film of the Canadian national anthem. And we all learned it then because it's a pretty song. And then they would run the American, run the American one with the fireworks. But the other one was, you'd see the people working and being about their task of keeping Canada going. So that was very clever to bring us in that way. Where I thought, and this is very thin soup I'm pouring here, but I was surprised, and not that it matters because the speech was fine, but I think when you were talking about the French version, you made it sound like the Marseillaise, the French national anthem. And maybe if you give this speech again, you can hit that a little harder. Especially that scene in Casablanca, I thought you'd come up with that. So, also, you could have talked more about how the French were clever, because when they took over, explored, invaded, whatever you want to call it, they were kind to the natives. They didn't treat the natives with no respect. They were very respectful of their customs and the way they did things. And the Brits just immediately wanted little British gentlemen. And if you couldn't get in line, God help you. So the big thing that I loved, and I'm the pain in the rump know-it-all, I had no idea about this French one being so different. So I will be grateful for that, because when I'm not here, I'm the bar know-it-all like Cliff Clavin, and now I can have fun with that too. So I definitely appreciate the whole thing. But it was a great moment, and sometimes you got to leave the path because the theme is so inviting, and that's what you did, and that's okay with me. We're not going to give you a hard time for strolling off. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Dave. And the person who's getting in the most steps today, our timer, who's sitting way in the back. Come up and give us a timer's report on the evaluators.
A shocking personality he has. All three of our evaluators times were really good. 2:16 for Margot, 2:24 for Stephen, and Dave was 2:57. So it looks like all three of those qualify. Please cast your ballots for either Margot, Steve, or Dave.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We go ahead and do our voting, and I will relinquish control to our general evaluator, Les Robinson.
Thank you, Dave. We'll start with a great meeting by everyone. Number one. Number two, plethora. That word of the day seems to come back to this meeting every once in a while. And I think it's one of the most important words when you're doing a speech. Plethora. It gives everybody that Toastmasters distinction. But getting to all three evaluators. Once again, Margot, Steve, and Dave are all experienced Toastmasters. They gave great evaluations. They all did the sandwich approach. But what I liked about Margot is she was very energetic. I I think she was enjoying the evaluation of Mike, using the positive energy, the inspired. It was like a really incredible high energy evaluation from Margot. Steve, this wasn't you, it was the volume. The controls on the volume were down. I had to turn my volume up and then turn the volume down. But otherwise, once again, I loved your review, refer to Fix Better. I liked all of the bullet points, how you were very concise. Once again, the sandwich approach, excellent. Dave Licata. Dave is just incredible. He loves to talk, but I do like how he used the Cliff Clavin in his evaluation. I thought that was very good. But I always enjoy Dave's stories. He knows everything about everything, and he's always 100% correct. That's what I love about Dave's stories. The team was inviting to the event. Just all three were. It was an enjoyable review of the evaluators because they were all excellent. There was anything I could find wrong. So once again, it was three very 100% evaluations right across the board. A great meeting, and I will pass it back to the Toastmaster, Dave.
Thank you, Les. Appreciate that.
Welcome.
Just going to change it up a little bit because I know that on occasion Tracy has to leave early. I will turn it over to our quiz master, Tracy.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. So I have a couple of questions. We've all been listening really well, I'm sure. Who is the person in Toastmasters that we need to call for coffee in retirement?
Dave Licata.
Absolutely. Who in Toastmasters stands out in a Catholic Italian Mass?
Blonde Beth.
That's right. And this might be a little bit tougher. What are the two largest online sporting sites?
FanDuel and Traffic.
Yep.
DraftKings.
Oh, Traffic King.
DraftKings.
King. That makes more sense. Thanks.
I think it was Sports King. Can Mike verify that?
King. He's
DraftKings.
He's correcting us all. Some of
Okay,
you
thank
had it.
you.
Some of you are secret bettors, I can tell. DraftKings and whatever the other one was. I just said it a minute ago.
Perfect. And then our last question. This was a common theme amongst all of our speakers. What was one common theme from all of our speakers in regards to Canada?
Positivity.
Friendly.
Friendly.
Polite.
Polite was the word I
Polite.
used, but
There we
friendly
go.
and positive all work. Mr. Toastmaster, and thank you, Katie, for standing up at the podium.
Agreed. Thank you, Katie. Can we have our word master, Lynn, come up and tell us how we did with plethora?
Me too.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. A plethora of our members, both in attendance and on Zoom, used the word of the day. I heard it from Maggie, Darcy, Tracy, Phil, Dave Licata, Bridget, Beth, Kate, Mike Florio, Margot, and Les. I couldn't be more proud. I do have a few words to say about Canada. I too worked for a Canadian company. I worked for the U.S. division of President's Choice, which was a division of Loblaw Brands Limited. So I went up to Toronto for many a meeting as well. It was always funny. The Canadian Border Patrol didn't didn't want Americans coming over and working and taking Canadian jobs. So they would always ask me, nature your visit. I'm going to Toronto for meetings. I said, will you be doing any work? And I said, no, I'll just be sitting in meetings, you know. So that pretty much, that's a definitive case that no work gets done in meetings whatsoever. So I did want to talk to some people about lost Canadians. Who knows that term? Anybody? Since 2009, Canada limited citizenship to people whose parents were born directly in Canada. If it skipped a generation or two or three, you were not Canadian. In 2025, a bill was introduced, C3, which changed all that. You could go back 1, 2, 3, as many as you could trace your lineage to somebody born in Canada. I fall in that category. My grandfather, my namesake, was born in a small town in Ontario, Lithwell, in 1906. And I'm in the process of claiming my Canadian citizenship. I know Bridget's doing it as well. There's probably other people here that could claim dual citizenship, US and Canada, all for a little research and some filing fees. So I am Canadian.
Thank you, Len. And Chris, how did we do with our filler words as the master?
Yeah, I'm going to have to say we did great today. I brought my notes and I wrote down everyone's name, and I thought there would be a plethora of words, but I didn't really catch anything. So everybody did great.
Thank you. And Larry McKenzie, our grammarian.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Today, as grammarian, and it's the first time I've been grammarian in quite a while, and it brought back memories of my English teacher, Mr. Patty, who actually instilled a lot of different things, and I was thinking of them this morning as I was listening throughout the meeting. One of the things that I caught very early, well, first of all, before I tell you about that, there are a couple of Canadian things that I have to basically clarify. There's the good word. In 1980, the national anthem in Canada, which we all know as O Canada, became the national anthem. Prior to that, it was nobody. God Save the Queen. Yes, and then in 1980, they adopted O Canada as their national anthem. One of the other things, too, is that Canada actually has two national sports. They have a summer sport, which is lacrosse, which was because of the indigenous people, became basically their summer sport, and then hockey, because of the popularity, became their winter sport. The other thing is, I was growing up as a child in Nova Scotia, there was two TV stations. One was in French, and the other, I'm not quite sure what it was. So what you would do is if you were watching TV programs, they were all in French. So I, as a child, took French in school thinking, oh, I'm going to be able to learn. Well, as we go through Quebec, they don't speak the same French. So when they're speaking to you, I was in a different world. And living in one of the maritime provinces of Nova Scotia, Quebec kind of cut you off from the rest of Canada. And they actually talked about seceding at one time from Canada. So with that, back to our grammarian report. At the very beginning, there was a word that was used about an event that happened in Halifax, and it was a nuclear problem. The word was nuclear, but it was pronounced as nuclear. I do believe it was. Nuclear, yes. And I won't say who said that, but it was maybe our Toastmaster. Maggie used the word fellow wannabe Canadians. I love that. Let me see. Also, David used something that was kind of interesting at the very beginning. Our Toastmaster said, Canadians are very nice people, even when they break up with you. I can relate with that. Phil he used a word. Now this is going back to Mr. Patty. He said he knows this about everything I knows. Well, it's a subject verb agreement within there, which was a mistake because there's no S on knows. You should have eliminated that and everything about I know. So the S was there. When you're speaking Canadian, there's actually a term for that in Canadian. It's called Canadian raising, which is basically using like A and different Canadian words. And I just used wow. I'll leave from that. Bridget said, any water that is frozen is great to place or to play or to skate. And we always thought the same thing because we would play hockey and never even used the puck. You'd use whatever you had. What else? French Canadian, not the same. Okay. Anytime anyone makes a musical reference and when they're talking, I think that's proper grammar somewhere in there because Mike used made the rounds like a Tom Petty song. Quizmaster, what Tom Petty song? Mike? I'm the Night Watchman. Very good. Yes. All right. And he also said, my first really career. Really is an adverb and it doesn't modify the noun. So basically, it should have been my first real career. Beat the snot out of the Canadians. I don't know about that. Real quick, I've got two other things. Let's see. David said, when she got a cut, she bled maple syrup. I thought that might have even been the word of the day today, maple syrup. And the maple leaf is actually the Canadian symbol. Dual citizen, 2 passports. I'm also a dual citizen. The interesting thing is that I use my enhanced license when I go across the border. Not really the right way you're supposed to do it. When you go from America or from US to Canada, you're supposed to show them your American passport. When you come from Canada, if you're a dual citizen, you're supposed to show them your Canadian. If you read the new ruling that came through with the way that yes. So if you use your enhanced license, you're still good with that. Pure cinematic drama. I love that. A pleasant man holding a double-double. And one of my favorite from the whole day is discuss this calmly over a bowl of soup. I love that because David also used it in his evaluation, said, I'm using very thin soup that I'm going to be pouring here in your evaluation. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Larry. And nuclear was one of my Bushisms. That's how he pronounced it, I believe. Okay, and with that, Mike Licata, do you happen to have the wieners list or do you need me to do it?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Our winners this morning for table topics, we have a tie between David Licata and Bridget Newton. I have ribbons if you would like them. Our best evaluator this morning is Margot Bittner. And our best speaker this morning is Maggie Craig. You get it. This costs money. Yep. You're the only one. Nope. Sorry.
The winner is
5-0. Steve. Thank you. Steve.
I can never reach this mic. I just want to say, I didn't say A. And that is how everybody finds out I'm really Canadian because they'll know me for years. And they'll hear me say A. You're Canadian. I said, I wasn't trying to hide it. I mean, I really wasn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I know, that's what I'm doing right now. I will invite Christine Skirto up this morning. She's our guest in the room today. So if you want to tell us what you thought of the meeting, and we'll go from there.
Good. Good, thanks. Hi, good morning. What am I?
You can just give what you thought of the meeting.
Oh, okay. So, your meeting is great. You guys seem very organized. I like the feedback, positive and negative. The whole reason why I'm here is I know Marty from Tops, and I saw him walking out of here one morning at like 7:45, and I said to my dad, Marty was walking out of the Y at 7:45. He must not sleep because he's at Tops until like 12:30. And then Marty told me there was a Toastmasters meeting here, and I live here, but I also have an apartment in San Francisco where I've resided predominantly for the last 14 years. And over the last 3 years, I have been trying to get to a Toastmasters meeting because I I don't communicate well when it comes to myself or the business that I'm trying to start. And I've recently stopped working, and I've taken the last 3 months to really focus on my business. So when I ran into Marty and he told me there was a Toastmasters in Lockport, I couldn't believe it. So, I'm happy to participate. I like what I see. You guys seem organized. I like the feedback, and you seem to be a very close knit group of people who bounce well on and off of each other. So, it works well for me. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Christine. And now I'll turn it over to Kalina. What did you think of the meeting this morning?
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much. I am a consultant, and so I am in front of clients in a healthcare environment frequently, every day. But what I really took away from today, the tabletop seems to be more of that off the cuff, as you know things about your membership and asking them to speak on something um, not prepared. And so I really like that. I think that would be very beneficial for me. And the prepared, I love the topics. You guys give feedback. People accept that with humility and take it back to learn from. So overall, I enjoyed today. And I'll work with Margot. Margot, thank you for letting me be your guest on developing more from a class perspective, as well as the weekly Toastmaster meetings. So thank you again. Wonderful job.
Thank you. I have a couple more minutes, so I will go over our slate of officers for next year. So our president would be Len Thornton. Our vice president of education would be Mark Campos. Our vice president of membership would be Larry McKenzie. Our secretary would be Maggie Craig. Our treasurer would be myself, Mike Licata. Our vice president of public relations would be Mary Cavanero. And our sergeant at arms would be Chris Kelly. And this is part of the discussion, right? And we will vote next week on our slate of officers for next year. Tracy is our Toastmaster, and then Steve, you have a star show this weekend, right? Oh, last week. I'm sorry. Yeah, none of that. It's a great April and May. Okay. Plenty of rain. She's off. Tracy's no, she did right. She's off on. Does anybody else have any announcements this morning? All right. So I think we have a speaking option open in 2 weeks. Darcy just said so. Yeah, if you want to
Mike?
reach out to Zach, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
Mike? Yeah.
David, yeah, go
Hey.
ahead. I'm sorry.
Just friendly reminder that this year's international conference is in Vancouver, Canada. I hope to be there because somebody from my home club here in Charlotte will probably be on the big stage. She won the district conference, and Ed Tate was our keynote speaker. Ed Tate is the 2000 international winner, and he's a speaking coach, and he offered to help her for free because he also saw what I saw, and hoping that she'll be there. And if she's there, I'm going to attend the conference as well. So thank you, Mike.
Good luck to her.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure? Okay. So I will gavel the meeting down, and then Kate will finish up.